In my home, there was only a revolutionary flag. I owned no national flag at that time. I found something to create a flagpole, attached a flag to it, and fastened it to the tractor. It didn't last there for a long time, as one night later, it was destroyed by my fellow villagers. The idea to place a sign on my house, number 18 Heroes of the Heavenly 100 Street, came up when in Kyiv. And all over Ukraine, some streets, alleys, and squares were named in memory of the Heroes of the Heavenly 100. And I really wanted a similar one to exist in Crimea. On the 29th of November, I placed it on my house, and it stayed there to the 8th of December. At 7 a.m., they broke into my house with weapons, wearing bulletproof vests and helmets. They started yelling and demanding something. They arrived in 4 cars, and were at least 12 people for sure. No one was around at that time, neither neighbors nor fellow villagers. More than that, they brought attesting witnesses with them, and the only thing I could see when carried out of the house was the broken street sign and the flag torn down.
Starting in early February 2014, the atmosphere in Crimea was tense for the whole spring. Oleh and I agreed to meet on May 10th, but he didn't show up. The next day, I found out that Oleh had been detained. We had just bought beer and were passing by the former SBU building, where the FSB has settled in while looking for a comfortable place to enjoy it. Someone jumped on my back and asked, "Is that you, Tundra?" I didn't get it at first. I thought someone was just kidding me. I dropped the beer, and the woman who was passing by started shouting, "What's going on here?" Then we were knocked to the ground, our faces down. I was able to see several people in suits, trousers and white shirts, like Agent Smith from The Matrix. I was detained on May 10th, 2014, near my hallway entrance. I changed my residential address and phone number, but they still managed to discern it and found me. They appeared all around me, 15 people in civilian clothes. Immediately, they laid me down on the floor, dragged me, and drove away. They put a bag on my head and laid me face down on the floor, but I know my city very well. I quickly realized that we were in the former building of the SBU. It was an ordinary office on the 3rd floor. They sat me down on a chair, but I repeatedly fell from it because they were constantly beating me. They threw me on the floor, undressed me, and taunted me with threats of rape. My hands were chained behind my back, and a bag was placed over my head as to suffocate me. I have seen it many times in the movie, how people are suffocated with a bag. It seems that there is nothing so terrible that someone wouldn't be able to stand it. Just hold one's breath, as if you just dove underwater. But movies lie. The basic human instinct is to breathe. And when it's artificially blocked from you, the fear that results is truly beyond comparison. It's the fear of death, such darkness as an abyss and utterly terrifying. Then we went to my home. They were sure that there were terrorists hiding with weapons. The door opened as they expected to see a den of bona fide Ukrainian terrorists, but all that was there was my daughter with a book. They began to search, and there was nothing. I asked, "Well, guys, are we done here?" They answered, "No, we got you. We won't let you go now. You're coming with us." Ole's attitude helped me from the outset. When my lawyer visited me for the first time, she told me about Ole, how he was tortured but refused to give his testimony, and stayed strong. This strengthened my nerves quite a bit. Ole and I were together in the glass courtroom cage. We talked and exchanged jokes the whole time. At one of the court hearings, a secretary brought 15 volumes of our criminal case. And these volumes, they got scattered around. I said to Ole, "Look, our case is falling apart." We didn't take the court proceedings seriously, not for a single moment. Instead, we looked at it as a theater performance, where we were the viewers in a VIP theater box. I thought to myself, if the court ruling is issued on August 24th, on Ukraine's Independence Day, it would be cool to participate actively in this performance, rather than just being passive viewers. Even though the court decision was issued on August 25th, we did sing the national anthem of Ukraine. That was our answer to the slapstick comedy show we were watching all that time. When we started singing, the judge fumbled, and not knowing what to do, announced a 15-minute break. When he was leaving the courtroom, we watched him leave and we were singing. Like the dew before the sun, enemies will fade. Imagine a small chamber, 2 meters wide, 3.5, 4 meters long, like a crypt. Very thick walls. The window is very high and deep. It is covered with a grating and a matte film. That means it always looks like dusk in your cell. I spent almost 6 months there, in a cell where it's always dusk and an inseparably buzzing light that is always on. At 6 each morning, we get up, make our beds, have breakfast, stroll around, then lunch. Everything is the same each day in prison. There's a corridor, a sink, a toilet, a small dining room reserved for tea. At the exit, there was a cloakroom. Behind the barracks, there was a local section, a courtyard where we could take a walk at any time. I grew up in Crimea, so I'm used to the sun. There are 300 sunny days a year in Crimea, meaning that even Kyiv often seems too cloudy and cold of an environment for me. Meanwhile, in Labutnanki, a standard winter lasts 9 months out of the year. It snows for 9 months, from October to June. It is always windy and humid, but a person gets used to everything, as Dostoevsky once said. Around a month into my stay, I personally grew to appreciate captivity's effect on my very essence. The prison penetrates one's dreams and never leaves. You are constantly in prison, even in your sleep. On the one hand, it seems scary. On the other, it is strangely easier. There's no psychological breaks in which you feel yourself a free person in your dreams, only to tragically wake up in prison. There is no such dichotomy, or switch to be flipped. You are always in prison. You even dream of the sea this way. You are on an island. You are near the sea, but you know that a convoy will come and take you to your cell. This occurs at the end of the walk. Mostly strangers were writing to me. Many were from Ukraine, but there was also a very large percentage of letters from Ukraine that got lost along the postal route. Ultimately, there was a better chance of receiving a letter from Australia than from Kyiv. The detainee does not want so much as a package full of sausages, so much as a letter from relatives, or just a letter at all. It's a glimpse of light, a sign of support. Of course, you constantly communicate with your mother and children. You constantly conduct this virtual communication. They are always with you. This is the dearest thing of all. As a sign of my contempt for all that was happening, I had announced a hunger strike. I don't know exactly how many days I had spent hunger striking. Well, they were counted to be more than 200 days, I guess. On the 24th day, Archbishop Clement persuaded me to proceed to the confined hunger striking by the principles that monks use in their fast. 50 grams of dried bread and 2 glasses of oats kissel. The first 2 weeks were the hardest. You can't get used to the starvation till you start fasting yourself. This makes you smell like kerosene, and you constantly feel it all. You constantly want to eat, but at some point it becomes your usual state. The main thing in all of it is to continue fighting. The system is tooled for something else, for a complete obedience. But by feeling the power of resistance, it gets befuddled. Of course, I knew that Oleg had announced a hunger strike. I was actively persuaded to stop hunger striking. But being in solidarity with Oleg, I told them that I can't stop hunger striking, at least because it would seem disingenuous from my side. Discussions about the EPW exchange were received regularly during chats with the lawyer. The hope that it would happen soon wasn't there. It seemed to me that even if it happens, then it will happen sometime around New Year's. It was the only night that I went to sleep just as I was, fully dressed, without any bedtime prep. And at that moment, the chamber opens and someone tells me, "Suit up, to the exit." When I was escorted to the bus, I saw the faces of everyone in it. Right away, I recognized Oleg Sentsov and Sasha Kolchenko. That's when I realized that something was happening. Some portal is opening. It's an absolute positive feeling that you are about to be released. This actually happened as described. Moscow's traffic stopped. They stopped the traffic everywhere. We were passing by the Kremlin itself, with a beacon light leading us. And then there was the AN-148 plane. It was announced to us that we were already on the territory of Ukraine. We clapped as a sign of our joy. I still noticed no sense of euphoria, even as we passed the border. There was a feeling of something unfinished and the incompleteness of the matter.
I came out to the ramp. There were many people waiting for us. I noticed my mother and sister first. We hugged and kissed, and then someone said, "You need to greet the president." I studied at Vernadsky Taurida National University, majoring in tourism. I haven't thought or planned yet if I will work in this industry, but I do have experience in tourism already. At least 5 years of extreme tourism in Russian prisons and camps. I was quite surprised that a lot of large men ride electric scooters on the streets. Food delivery is very popular. IQOS are everywhere in Kyiv. I was a bit surprised that you can pay in the supermarket using your phone. I tried not to plan anything, since I didn't know how long I would stay in prison. I could be released tomorrow, or I could stay there for the rest of my sentence. In prison, where I existed for 5 years, I discovered that every last little thing matters. Nothing is thrown away there. Everything is held on to and reappropriated for something. The most important thing is tea. You need to store it somewhere, in a bag, in a box, or in a jar. I kept it in a jar. It was not just any jar. I had 2 notebooks, a yellow and a blue one, glued them to the jar and wrote the words on them, Slava and the word Ukraini, meaning glory to Ukraine. And I left it routinely in the most prominent place. All 5 years that I spent traveling around the Russian Federation's prisons, this jar was with me. I was always putting it in the most prominent place, which, like clockwork, annoyed the prison guards on duty very much. They were constantly taking it away from me, tearing off the flag, trying to destroy it. There was a lot of petty fuss about this modest little tea can, and I continued my little struggle, unbeknownst to anyone, not visible to anyone, tete-a-tete with the system, the struggle for myself, for my dignity, for my country, and the 2 stripes, yellow and blue. That Oleg that I was in the past would not listen to anyone, and the present-day Oleg wouldn't be able to tell him anything. This was a person who listened only to himself. For those who find themselves in these conditions, I wish them patience above all. Patience is the most important lesson a prison teaches. This all will last long. It will be a painful story, but one must not give up, must not break down. Challenges are given only to the strong.